If you're looking to build out your work van or trailer, you're in the right place. I've spent the last 15 years working on my van and trailer layouts, and I've put together a list of the 20 tips that I think will make you super successful in building out your own layout. Let's not waste any time and let's get into those 20 tips right now. This is my 2020 Mercedes Sprinter that I've been working out of for the last 4 years. I currently have it laid out where a lot of my commonly used tools are on the side, which faces a street, which is really convenient. And then let's go over to the back. I have tools stored along the left and right side with a large center open aisle. The first tip I'm going to share is don't overload it. When I first started with my 16-foot enclosed trailer, my goal was to fit every tool I've ever owned on the trailer. I quickly saw that you're limited with no matter how much space you have in what you're driving or towing. So what I started doing was listing my core tools that I needed for daily tasks and for the things that I don't use as often, like drywall tools or especially tools like tiling. I created plastic containers that I could load those and keep them in the shop. And when I was doing that type of task, I could put them in the center aisle. And that way I'm not driving them around every day. The next tip is going to contradict what I just said. And that's, in addition to core tools, you also have to think about the tools that never make it on your pack list on a job. For me, that would be things like a shovel, bolt cutters, concrete grinders, things that I didn't realize I was going to run into on the job. I try to make sure I keep those stocked as well, because that's the thing I end up running up and buying if I'm far away from the shop. Another one would be loppers, landscape loppers. Sometimes they've got limbs in the way. Things like that, I try to find a place for those on the van as well. When I talk about making a list of your core tools, one of the important things that I will note that I learned accidentally, not on purpose, was when I bought the van, I was started at a really busy time in my business. I didn't have time to build the shelves. So my son and I just started putting the core tools we needed on the floor. We even had a rolling drawer container strapped to the side just to hold the things we needed. And that went for about 6 months that we just didn't have time to devote to building a storage solution. But what that did is it really showed me the core tools, because we were only putting the things we had to in here. We'd pull things from the shop. So my core tools were built for me in that 6 months. And I realized I didn't need as many tools as I thought I did in my previous van. There's a lot of tools you drive around with you just don't use that much. Designing your layout can be done digitally in a graphics program such as SketchUp, which I'm proficient in, but I found it easier for my brain to just start out working in the space. So I started with this left-hand wall, and I took my core tools list and I put as many as I could in a compact spot, starting with just a box at a time. And then I moved on to this side of the van, which I put some of the larger tools that would not fit in my original design on this side, followed by the door side, which also has the same compact storage. Another thing that really helps early on is to decide on a standardized tool container. Although you can't be completely on one brand or model, it's good to be on one platform. For me, it's the Festool Systainers because I have a lot of Festool tools, but there's other companies like Milwaukee and DeWalt that make a standardized solution that fits very compactly. When you have that, you're able to get the tools you need in a very small space. I also like to marry the tools together. Like I'll have more than one sander in a container. I take out the inserts, the factory inserts. I'll put more than one drill in a container. That lets me have more efficient use of the space. It also makes it easier to get it out and onto the job site. Next tip in planning your layout would be to place the heavy items and the large items close to the side of the van so that you can easily remove and put them back in. For me, my miter saw is one of the largest on the stand that I have, but I don't use it all the time, so I've actually moved mine a little back. It's not too much trouble to get it out. The ladder is something that I use all the time, so I have it where I can slide it off the back, because I think almost every job I do, it seems like I need the ladder. Another example of large and bulky items would be that I have my large dust collector and my table saw down low where I can easily reach it and not have to reach up high, and I can easily put it back. Next tip is after you place the large items, you generally can find a space that can be used for something else. For example, I recently got the Festool Exoactive skeleton, and I found putting it in this dead space is a perfect use of it. Avoid analysis paralysis, which I'm very guilty of. I spent a long time over the 6 months before I built out thinking and mapping out exactly the curve of the van, and I planned on building my cabinets to match that curve. But then one day I was looking at it and I realized that if I built a half section that went up flush to the back side of the van and then put a second square section above it, what I got from that is I get more floor space, And it also allows, if I ever want to take this section out, I could use it as shop storage, and it's much easier to build when you don't have curves. So don't overanalyze it. Don't be afraid to do something just as what we call temporary. And I'm on 3 years, three and a half years with this solution, and it still works great for me. My next tip is about Rivet Nuts, and that is the way to connect all of your wood cabinetry to your van. Rivet Nuts are basically like pop rivets. They get clamped into place to the frame of the van through the back of the cabinet, and they have a thread in the center of them, so you can actually screw a screw into it once you lock them into place. And they're great for attaching cabinetry. They're easy to remove when needed. Definitely check out Rivet Nuts if you have not seen them already. I'll put a link to Rivet Nuts in the description of the video. It's all about weight. Weight is extremely important. I try to eliminate as many cross shelves as I can. The commonized containers help with that. But something else I'll share is if you're really wanting to make sure you're cutting your weight down, there's two things you can do. You can cut out squares in your cabinetry. You can also eliminate shelves. If you have to have a shelf, use 1/2-inch wood instead of 3/4 for your shelves. Stick with 3/4 on your uprights. My next tip will be lighting. You need to consider lighting when doing your van layout, which just actually turned off. I have it tied into the cargo lights, which is nice because the factory option will make it come on when I need it to. But I just basically put some inexpensive LEDs that I bought on Amazon. I'll find the link to that and put it in the description as well. I placed them around each one of these crossbars, and at night I can see no problem. I have some other lighting solutions that I'll show you now. I also have my portable Festool lights that I can just grab in case that I need to see into a crevice at night to try to find something in a container, or I can take it on the job site with me. Another tip is to make sure you think about the outside of the van and lighting appropriately when you're working in darker places or you find yourself working up until night. I have lights that will work on all 4 sides, so whether I'm working or picking up, it gives us proper illumination and keeps us from using little flashlights. My next tip is one I just learned out in the wild and on the streets, and that is to use my Bessie one-handed clamps for everything that doesn't seem to want to stay. So I'm regularly going through, and if I think something's not being held, I'll use it. And some of these temporary solutions have become permanent. Like, for example, on these little mini Systainers, it keeps these from coming out of the shelf. And for this walking plank, I put one on here. I just like to use them. It's another place to store. I've got my bar clamps holding on my dollies, and it's just really handy to have a lot of the clamps in here. Not only use them on the work site, you also use them in the van. Also, it's important to think about what you're going to be hauling as far as materials on the job. For me, it's 4x8 sheet goods, which I can easily place across here. I have 10 feet from the back wall to there, so I can carry trim if needed. I also have this door that's removable that gives me up to 14 feet. In addition, if I'm hauling things, say 19 or 20 feet, I have the roof rack above, which is great for hauling long materials and getting to the job site without having to make them stick out the back with the door open. This next tip is from experience, and you want to make sure that all of your tools go back into place as easily as if you just set them in the center aisle, because if you don't do that, on a Friday you'll be working late and you'll just pile everything up in the center aisle. Then on Monday morning you come in and find yourself having to clean up a big mess. So make sure that the tools are easy to put in place so you never have to pick them up twice. I found myself regularly picking up trash off the center aisle of the trailer and the van. And it's all because we're always buying materials. We're buying screws, we're buying boxes of lock sets, and you're throwing them in the middle of the aisle because you don't have where to put them. So having a designated trash container, I have this little plastic drawer-like container that I just can throw things in, and as it gets full, I empty it, has been a big contributor to keeping the van looking neat and tidy. Another big tip would be to use a whiteboard or your phone's notepad to keep track of anything you find that is running low or something you want to add a place for storing. This is not a one-time thing and you're done. It's a constant build out of things that each day it gets better, each month it gets better, and you keep making it more customized for how you work. My next tip would be to eliminate all of the factory boxes and non-standard sizes of all the things that you buy and you stock in your van, and go with a standardized container system. For example, in this box, you can see how many different types of screws that I have in this one container. It's easy to see how many you have, it's easy to store, and it goes very compactly. I can grab it, take it to the job site, I know exactly what I have. My next tip is to regularly reflect on your layout and how it works for you. An example of right now, even 3 years later, I've recognized how much I use this stack of what I call my hardware store of commonly used fasteners and things. And what I don't use as much, for example, is my laser. I could actually have that inside. I would much rather have this stack go further up so that I could use it from the street side, and I would be okay with this being not as accessible. So you always need to look at your layout and be changing it so it works better for you. Battery storage is something that's changed for me on trailers or vans. In the past, I would have a charging station with chargers mounted, and it took up a lot of space. I've found that battery life now is so long on tools that I'm able to charge the batteries at the shop, keep the fully charged ones on this shelf. Then I also have 2 Systainers that are fully loaded if I'm working for a while on a job site. And I don't charge anymore on the van. Just in case I find myself with dead batteries on a job site, I do have a Systainer that has all my chargers loaded in case I need them, but I rarely have to access that. So keep that in mind and don't go overboard on charging stations. A must is any bag you grab every time you go into the job site, have it where you can grab it easily and quickly without going into the van. For me, it's the work bags from Festool. I have one with all my commonly used hand tools, laser measure, tape measure, that kind of thing. I even have a drill attached to it. I can grab this and do a lot of tasks just by getting this and say a fastener with screws. Then my son also has his right here. This has worked out great for us. We did this maybe about a year and a half ago, and it's just been amazing. For the past few years, this layout has worked out great for me, but there's not a day or a week that doesn't go by that I don't think about other improvements. I guess it's never finished. I hope this helps you out with planning out your layout or improving your existing. If you want to see more of my design and how I have it laid out, I'm going to put a card to my van tour that's going to either be here or here. Be sure to check that out, and thanks for watching.